Hello there, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, and I'm joined by both Matt Ray and Brandon Martin of VR2 for this podcast. You can visit them at vr2.site, and we are at RockyTopInsider.com. Guys, we're making this a mailbag episode because we know a lot of our listeners have a lot of questions. A lot of offenses have a lot of questions about what's going on with the 2020 class and some of the 2021 class as well. We've got a lot to cover, and really kind of the most latest news and notes will be kind of covered in this part because people have asked, obviously, about Tennessee's biggest targets in the 2020 cycle. So without further ado, let's just kind of address, we got several questions from TWA, from VFL, and from WNC, from Jacob on Twitter. We had several people asking questions about, Zach Evans, about Malachi Wideman, about Dee Beckwith. So let's kind of get into Zach Evans here, and I want to see, you've provided information on your insider notes and stuff, Matt and Brandon, on VR2.site. The Evans thing is interesting. We were talking before we record here, and just about some just different stuff with his recruitment. Wasn't supposed to take a visit anywhere this weekend. It looked like maybe he's going to go to Georgia, and then they get Dawan Edwards, I think say his name, to commit to them on Thursday, a four-star running back to commit to them. And then you look at, you mentioned in the insider notes, I think earlier this week, Matt, that it looked like he might be going to USC this weekend, but then he canceled that visit. And then there's all the talk about, he's just not going to visit anywhere. And now there's been reports from other people that, Tennessee's coaches are trying to go in home with him either tonight or tomorrow. Where do we stand right now? Is there a team to watch? Is Ole Miss kind of Tennessee's biggest competition? Is there someone else waiting in the weeds? I've heard Jason Swain mention the fact that maybe Ohio State could get involved. What's the latest with Zach Evans as we're less than a week away now from National Signing Day?
Yeah, to answer that, I really don't know where to start. I mean, the amount of stuff that you hear from Evans's camp, from people in the area, is just, it's ridiculous in a 24-hour span what you hear. You don't know what to believe because I don't think anybody knows. I think everything's worked out with Evans, and a lot of times I'm not even sure that his camp truly knows what's going on. But it's neither here nor there. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure that Evans knows what he wants to do. I think he makes a decision next week. Right now, the general consensus, everybody you talk to is kind of Ole Miss is the team that's laying in the weeds. Tennessee is the choice for hey, maybe this kid should really, consider coming to Tennessee, and this could be the place. He could get away from everything. He's far enough away from home, can clear his mind, a completely fresh start. He could be the star back that they've needed forever. You throw Jay Graham into the mix, and it even starts to make more sense. I talked to his brother a little bit about Jay Graham. He was a little bit surprised that Graham left Texas A&M. So, I'm not sure that it was good surprise or bad surprise. It's hard to kind of judge somebody's, feelings over just a text message. But, I feel like they were relatively surprised. So I'm not sure if that's good or bad for Tennessee, but we'll see. I'd like to think that it's a good sign, but I really think you have to see. I don't think he's going to take a visit that's going to go public this weekend. I guess that's the best way to say that, is I don't think he's going to take a public visit. I've heard some good news for Tennessee in the last 2.5 hours. If that news I heard, the last news I heard, is true, then there's a lot of reason for, some optimism. But, I still haven't been able to completely confirm that. I'm not, going to be willing to put anything out on that, but we'll see. We'll see where it stands. I think, I've talked about this before, and I talked to a lot of my friends that, cover Georgia. I have, several good friends that cover Georgia. They've been very good to me, and at the end of the day, they have talked about, before this all came out with Evans and everything ended, it was a headache before it all happened. Like, it was it was draining. I heard that word multiple times, and there's not a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of as much bad things around Evans as people are led to believe, but I think there's just some dramatics. You see a diva recruitment every year, and this may be it, probably to a little bit more extreme, but I think this is it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We'll see if anybody gets in home, but that's pretty much it.
Well, guys, here's a question we all three can answer. It's from Jacob. He was asking about Zachary Evans. He said, if Evans does come to Tennessee, how much of a factor would he be due to Eric Gray and the rest of the backs? I'm under the impression, and then I'll throw this over to you, Brandon, because to get you in here. But I'm under the impression that if Tennessee does land Zach Evans, that means at least one of Tennessee's upperclassmen backs, Ty Chandler and Tim Jordan. I think that at least he's gone. And also to kind of follow up with this question, Michael Henry also asked if Evans does come, does that mean Whitehead would move over to linebacker? I'm under the impression that if Evans lands here, you have Eric Gray and Evans as a sophomore and freshman. You have Whitehead, you have T. Hodge, you have Jabari Small, who you all signed in this class. I would be stunned if Chandler Jordan, if one of those guys didn't transfer, and I actually think I could see maybe both of them transferring. I think one might stay, but you look at a Carlin Fields and me. Maybe he moves too. But Brandon, what do you think? Because I think Evans has a clear path to the field if he comes to Tennessee, even though you have a pretty loaded backfield, because he just does things that Tennessee's running backs don't do. I think Gray is a dynamic player. He's not a great pass blocker yet, and he still has to figure out some things. He's not going to run in between the tackles a whole lot. Evans is a kid who can run between the tackles, around the tackles, outside the tackles. He's going to be used in space as a pass catcher. I think if he comes to Tennessee, he has immediate, kind of path to the field no matter who's in front of him. But also, I'm curious your thoughts, because I know you said you like Whitehead as a linebacker. So what do you think about Evans if he comes in the crowded backfield, and then do you think Whitehead moves back to linebacker if he does come to Tennessee?
If Tennessee lands Zach Evans, somebody's moving. I don't know who, and I don't know where. I know there have been talks about T. Hodge getting a look at linebacker. There have been talks about, of course, Whitehead going to linebacker, and as good as I think Whitehead would be at running back, I think he's a better linebacker. Jabari Small's got good enough hands to maybe move to slot receiver and provide some depth. He did that in high school, and I think that might be a move you could see. Chandler and or Jordan transferring wouldn't stun me. It also wouldn't surprise me, though, if Tennessee really tries hard to keep those guys in Knoxville. I don't think you could keep them. I don't think they'll be able to keep them both. You might be able to keep one of them. Here's the thing with Evans. Looking strictly between the lines on the field, this kid is going to make an impact, and he's going to play.
Oh yeah.
If you could pair him with Eric Gray, as Eric Gray really rounded into form the end of last season and got more carries, Eric Gray is a more complete back, I think, than a lot of people realize. He did a lot of between the tackles running in high school. Mm-hmm. He's not afraid to run between the tackles. He's a workhorse back. He can take that pounding. I think as he just physically gets a little older and a little bigger, you'll see the pass blocking improve, and I think you'll see him do more of the between the tackles running. That's not a concern with me at all with him. Evans has got that immediate path to the field. But you also have a lot of issues with Evans going, okay, is he going to come in and do what we want him to do? Is he going to stay out of trouble? Is he going to be able to pick the system up enough to make an immediate impact? So you would really like to keep those older guys, the Ty Chandler and the Tim Jordan, just in case. Now, I think Evans is a kid that Knoxville is probably about the ideal landing spot for him. He's a guy that I think he needs a strong locker room, and I think he needs some teammates that are going to be close to him, that are on the straight and narrow, and you're not going to have issues getting in trouble, anything like that, and are going to hold him accountable. If he comes in to Tennessee, you're going to be sharing a locker room with Brandon Kennedy, and more importantly, I think even that, with Trey Smith. Those are two guys that are super high character. They're going to hold you to a high standard. They're going to pull the best out of you. Those two dudes are not going to put up with somebody derailing this team. They've worked too hard and been through too much and been here too long, especially Trey, to see this team starting to trend the right direction and have a chance to really make a big step forward, make a big impact. They're not going to let somebody derail it. And then you're talking about the running back room you could put him in. If you could keep a Tim Jordan, who now has his daughter and has really matured and really grown up, you can pair him with an Eric Gray, who is a very, very high character young man, no kind of issues, no real concerns with him. He's a guy that you trust on the field and off the field. You can do a lot for Evans right there. I think it's a really healthy room for him. Again, you have Jay Graham there now. I think the landing spot makes a lot of sense. I think he's got a chance to get on the field. But if Tennessee takes him and if they feel like he can play, somebody or somebodies are moving. I think you'll see at least one of the older backs transfer, and I think you'll see at least one of the backs in this class move to another position. They may come into camp and let Whitehead and T. Hodge just let them know, hey, look, whoever loses this battle is going to linebacker.
Jerry Banks has proven that if you can't hold on to the football, Pruitt will move you to linebacker in a heartbeat. So I think if one of those guys shows an issue with fumbles, they're head of the defense.
Yeah, Pruitt doesn't like it when you drop the ball.
Nope. Neither does Jim Chaney. None of those guys like it when you drop the ball. To kind of build off here, talking about these, the kind of Tennessee's top 3 targets remaining here in this class. Mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned Wideman and Beckwith earlier, but Malachi Wideman, Dee Beckwith are the other 2 main guys Tennessee's going after, 2 4-stars in this class. Got a question from VFL from WNC saying, who should be the priority if you can only land one? Who should be the priority, Beckwith or Wideman? I think that is a very interesting question because I think both those guys address very different needs. Matt, I'll throw it over to you first, and then I'll get your thoughts, Brandon. But who should be the priority if you can only land one of them? Should it be Dee Beckwith or Malachi Wideman?
Ooh. I didn't read that question beforehand.
You want to toss it over to Brandon first so you can think?
No, that's a good question. For me, I'm going Malachi Wideman. Brandon's probably biting through his tongue right now not to fight me. I'm going Malachi Wideman. I think you really need a big name receiver in this class, and that's not to knock Dee Beckwith. Kid's incredible athlete. I feel like does a lot and can do a lot in a lot of positions. If this is last year's class, you need Dee Beckwith in a big way. But I think when you come into this year and you look back to where we were this time last year, it was Rakim Jarrett, E.J. Williams, all those big name pass catchers. Who was Tennessee going to get? This was supposed to be an impressive wide receiver haul. You had Jarrett, who was potentially your 5-star talent. You had Williams, who's your big body pass catcher down the field. You had several other guys on the board. Jalen Hyten and Jimmy Callaway turned out to be absolute steals, in my opinion, and their rankings have reflected that. But you still need that big frame, big body pass catcher in a Jim Chaney set. And yeah, there's some guys on campus now, but you probably really need one per class. And I think that's why you take Malachi Wideman. He's special down the field. So,
Brandon,
that's my pick.
Are you going Beckwith, Brandon?
I don't know. We're talking football or basketball because both of these guys can play for both teams.
That's the thing too. Yeah, that's another thing is that both these guys are. I think Wideman's an overall better basketball player, but both these guys are multi-sport athletes who are just. I mean, they're both very physically gifted. They're just phenomenal athletes to watch. I mean, Wideman won a dunk contest recently, and he is just he was a very good basketball player otherwise. And then Beckwith's been a very solid basketball player who's gotten legit scholarship offers from Division I schools for his basketball skills too. So yeah, they're both very good athletes for sure.
This is going to probably earn me some flack on Twitter. I think both of these guys are more important than Evans. I think Tennessee, if you look at the running back room, if Tennessee didn't sign another back, I still feel really confident about that group. I think that's a really good group, and I think Eric Gray is going to be a a huge star. I've been on the Eric Gray train since Tennessee picked up his signature in the early signing period in 2018. I think he's going to be a star. I'm more concerned because Wideman and Beckwith both fill big needs on this team. And as good as Wideman is, and he's really good. He's really, really good. I am going to go Beckwith. I think this team needs someone who can help at tight end. I don't know if that's going to be Beckwith's primary spot. I know they've talked about moving him all over the field. They've talked about playing him everywhere. Matt, you had talked with him before I went to see him at the basketball game, and I stuck mostly to basketball questions that night. But you had said that he talked about getting a look at quarterback as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's got a good arm. He has got a good arm. But I think Beckwith's home is probably going to be at tight end. If Tennessee feels their tight end room is good, he could be that big-bodied wide receiver. I think he could be a Jason Kroom type. Mm-hmm. I think he's a little more important than Wideman because he could potentially help you in more spots. But I think Wideman and Beckwith are 1A and 1B in this class. I actually think they're both more. I think Tennessee needs to get those two guys more than Evans. Evans is the big name, the dynamic player, and a guy that you want, but I think they need Beckwith and Wideman worse.
I get that argument. I wouldn't say Evans is a luxury because he's an instant impact type player as long as he's healthy and keeps his head on right. But he's a guy, like you said, that Tennessee's running back room, it's not like it's going to be devoid of talent or devoid of experience or anything like that if they don't get him. Whereas you look at Tennessee's tight end group, and it's not like it's, you don't have a whole lot there. You look at Tennessee's receiving group, and you have some names and some potential, but Wideman would bring something that you don't really have right now in this group. But at least of proven guys, I think D'Angelo Gibbs is going to be interesting to watch what he can do, and I like Palmer, but I don't think you're crazy for that, Brandon. What were you going to say there, Matt?
I think Evans is still top of the pecking order, and I see your argument, Brandon, and it's rightfully so. I don't think Tennessee is in desperate need of signing a tight end in this class. I think there's options out there. We talked about Jordan Wilson, the grad transfer from UCLA. Obviously, he told me earlier in the week that he's talked to Jarrett Garantano, but hasn't talked to any of the coaches. But at the same time, coming into this season, this team kind of looks like it's going to be Eric Gray's team anyways. And you still run the risk of, if that happens and these freshmen push, or say a Jeremy Banks gets reinstated and he gets a look back at running back for some reason instead of linebacker, that room's even more crowded, and you still run the risk of one of those guys transferring. Jabari Small, I think, is going to be an all-purpose guy. I think he's going to play slot receiver, a lot of special teams. And when you look at it, I can't tell you when Tennessee had a kid like Zach Evans. And there's a lot of question marks, and I'll agree those question marks with Wideman and Beckwith aren't there, which I think really push them up there. And like you say, Brandon, they do fill a lot of needs, but you talk about if Evans does pan out, you are talking about really, changing the outlook of your offense in a big way, almost immediately. You're bringing a kid that does it all and has done it all at the highest level of high school football in, and this is just talking to some folks in the last 2 weeks that have been around the ranking system and have been around Rusty Manziel and Trent Smallwood, talking to both those guys. One writes for Rivals, one writes for 247, and they both feel like Evans is a top 2-3 player in the country if everything else hasn't developed the way it has. So I mean, it's a really interesting argument to have, but I think Evans is still pretty high up there. At the end of the day, just from the fact that they just don't come along that often.
Well, if you can get a guy like Evans, especially behind the offensive line that he would play behind this year, and the offensive lines that he would play behind going forward, and the ability to pair him with an Eric Gray, who we saw We saw glimpses early in the season as a true freshman, 18 years old, just got on campus. We saw glimpses of what he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the back half of the season, as Tennessee started to run the offense more through him, and Gray was a guy that I felt didn't get enough carries this year, period. And we've talked about that, I know, off camera, and Matt, you and I have talked about that quite a lot in our group threads and on some of the podcasts that we do. I don't think Gray got nearly enough carries this season. But in the back,
I think you went through a little freshman block there for a little while, you know. And I mean, I think that happens, but I still would have liked to saw him. I'm not going to say carries, Brandon. I'll say touches. You know, sometimes it's just important to get a kid in space. Sometimes, you know, get a kid in space, let them, you know, make a move. I just don't feel like that happened as often as it should have. But at the same time, if you really look back at this year, the Tennessee offense was super strange to watch altogether. To think Jim Chaney did a really good job. You play, you know, 3-4 quarterbacks, ever how you want to look at that, and you pull out an 8-5 record. You have a quarterback with one hand part of the year, a quarterback that's battling, you know, multiple concussions, and running a wildcat a good portion of the time. I mean, it's tough to. I feel like Gray should have got more touches, but I just don't think you'll see a 1-2 punch like Evans and Gray if you can line them up. You're talking about Najee Harris and Trey Sanders at Alabama next year.
Yep.
If Sanders is healthy, that's the best 1-2 punch in the SEC. But Evans and Gray could easily, you know, be that 1-2 punch of the future.
To me, you look back on it and not, you know, size-wise, neither one would compare to Jalen Hurd, but it would be like having Hurd and Kamara on the same roster,
would be.
but actually using both of them, whereas Butch, for whatever reason, just didn't want to use Kamara. It'd be like having those two guys again. Obviously, like I said, I don't think either one of those guys had the exact same skill set as Hurd, but just having two backs who can do two different things and who can both make big plays.
Oh yeah, Hurd was very underrated.
Oh yeah,
Hurd was very underrated out of the backfield. I mean, he was very underrated. Hell, he's playing wide receiver right now. So,
playing receiver in the NFL, getting ready to play in the Super Bowl.
Yep. Well, I'll answer the question here, and then we move on to ask or answer some more questions. But I think both of you make good points. I think you can make an argument for either Beckwith or Wideman, and like you both just did. I'm going to go slightly with Wideman just because I think you made a point there too, Matt, is you know, while I don't think Tennessee's tight end room is great this year, you do have the option of maybe getting a grad transfer from UCLA. And I look at the tight ends Tennessee's on for the next cycle. And obviously Jake Browning still just committed to Clemson not too long ago. And players don't really decommit from Clemson. So I think that's probably a lost battle for Tennessee there. But you do have a guy like Hudson Wolf or Brock Bowers, or there are several different guys they're going to be targeting.
Miles Campbell's is another new name. He was at a 7-on-7 tryout this weekend in
Georgia,
and he's a very interesting name.
Yeah, I think they're in on enough tight ends in the next cycle to where if they miss out on getting, I think they can get Dee Beckwith obviously, but they miss out on getting someone to bring into that tight end room for the future. If they just bring in a grad transfer this year, I think they'll be fine and they can get someone that I think will be a good player in the future. And, you know, I think Jackson Lowe, Sean Brown, and Jacob Warren as examples. I think those guys can be good options for Tennessee at tight end. It's just you know it'd be nice to add in a Beckwith. And I don't really think there's technically a wrong answer here. I just think I would side with Wideman personally. But we got to get to some more questions here before we run out of time.
Another interesting name. Another interesting name's Kasim Hill.
Yep.
He's probably not going to play quarterback this year, so
yeah, I don't think so. I personally don't think he's going to. So a couple more 2020 questions here. You already kind of answered one about Get Bentonville here, so I'll go ahead and kind of let you build on that a little bit, Matt. He asked about the tight end transfer from UCLA. He asked, is he worth a spot as a one-year bridge at tight end? So you mentioned in your insider notes this week, you just mentioned now that he's talked to Garantano about coming up and visiting Tennessee, or just being in contact with Tennessee. So what's the latest with him, and do you think he's worth the spot on Tennessee's roster?
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a spot. I think, just if you can get good football players on your roster, you take them. I'm not sure he really fits Chip Kelly's system out there. I think you at least explore the option. I think Tennessee's going to have to explore the option. So I'm not sure that there's going to be many available that are better than him, but we'll see. But I think there's at least something to watch there. There's definitely interest on his part. So if Tennessee matches it, he's from Nashville. I would say it would be tough to beat him.
That also kind of answers VFL GBO 68's question about grad transfers Tennessee could get. They missed on any of the top 3 in 2020, so you have him. And I think Tennessee, regardless, will probably try to look at a grad transfer on defense, maybe a pass rusher or something. But that'll play out kind of as spring practices and stuff go on, and as guys transfer. You've obviously already got Cade Mays and Velus Jones Jr., but I think they're going to try to back count Velus Jones to the 2021 class since he's a grad transfer, and try to make some room to get some more people in this class. So I think they'll probably go after at least one, if not two more grad transfers, even if they get all 3 of the guys that they're going for in this 2020 class. But that one's always a name to watch out for, and also just kind of keep an eye on names and stuff who go in the transfer portal between now and April, May, and whatnot. A couple more 2020 questions before we get to some 2021 questions as well. Brendan, I'm going to throw this one to you because you've been a big fan and talked a lot about the Memphis kids. Michael Henry, along with asking about Whitehead moving back to linebacker potentially, he said, seeing a lot of people saying that Bryson Eason might be an outside linebacker or a defensive lineman because of his body type. Do we see him playing at inside linebacker or moving to a different position? And he's now listed, I think somewhere I saw, maybe on 247, he's listed at like 270 pounds. And according to what you told me, Brandon, that's not really exaggerating a whole lot. He's gotten bigger, he's gotten bulkier. Do you see him sticking at inside linebacker, or do you think they move him down the line, or maybe push him outside to the outside linebacker spot?
Look, man, I'm gonna let Bryce Eason play wherever he wants to because I'm not telling him no. That's a bad dude, man. His size. Here's the thing: is he was moving very, very well as a sideline to sideline tackling inside middle linebacker, a thumper middle linebacker. When I saw him, he was at least 260. He was at least 260 pounds, and he was thick, but he wasn't fat. It was bulked up, but it was a lot of muscle. He plays with a lot of strength anyway. He's got a nice burst. He's got a nice first step. I think you could look at him as an outside linebacker in this scheme if you wanted a big front. I start questioning how much of his speed you're losing if you take him at 270. Now, he's got the twitch. He's got great strength for a linebacker. If you can get him to 270 and he doesn't lose too much, maybe you look at him as that defensive end in this big front that Tennessee likes to run. And he can give you some more pass rush. He can hold up against the bigger guys, especially if you land a guy like Evans and you go, well, we can put Hodge and or Whitehead in the linebacking core next to Henry To'oTo'o, and we've got Martavius French, and you have Tyler Barron. Looks like he's going to play outside linebacker, that outside linebacker defensive end role. I mean, Eason's heavier than Tyler Barron. I mean, this big kid.
Can he play the Crouch role, kind of what Crouch did this year?
I think you're going to see some of that. I think he can line up. I think you could put him at defensive end on a 4-man front. I think you could put him at the outside linebacker, let him rush. I still think, unless he gets up to 270, I think you start losing some athleticism and some speed there. But at 260, he was running sideline to sideline and running running backs down from behind. So you can plug him in the middle. I think there's a lot of Crouch there. Only he's about 40 pounds heavier than Crouch.
Shoot. He's big. I mean, and it would not stun me at all if we see him move to a different position. He's just like you said. He's a guy that I'm not telling him where to play. He's just a big kid, and I think him and Martavius French are both interesting to keep an eye on what they do. I think French stays inside, but I think both those guys are just really good, really good linebackers in Tennessee, and I think both those guys are going to make an impact as freshmen. I don't know, starting wise or anything like that, but I think they both will at least make an impact for Tennessee. I think one more question for the 2020 before we move on to the next cycle here. TWA asked, where does Tennessee fall in the recruiting rankings if they land Evans, Wideman, and Dee Beckwith, and using the calculator on 247 Sports, it would most likely put them in the top 10. I don't think you'll be in the top 8. I don't think you would be able to leapfrog Florida unless they lose a commitment or something like that. So I think you'll be top 10, but I don't think you'll crack the top 8. But you should be pretty securely right there in the top 10 if Tennessee gets all three of those guys. I'd feel pretty safe saying Tennessee gets in the top 10 on 247 Rivals. They're right outside the top 10 on Rivals, I think, right now anyway. But with all the boost Tennessee got, and with Harrison Bailey and Jalen Hyatt and all those guys getting, Morvan Joseph especially getting bumps in the rankings, that kind of moved Tennessee up a little bit. They were, I think, 16th on the composite rankings in the team. Now they're 14th, so that moved them up a little bit. So if you get those three on the Tour 7 calculator, that would put Tennessee right in the top 10 range.
If you look at the calculator after you add them, because I just out of curiosity did that right before we got on this, it does put them ahead of Florida.
Oh, does it really? Okay.
It puts them ahead of Florida, and it puts them 0.06 points behind Auburn. So wow. Tennessee would be sitting at 8, and they would be knocking on 7 hard.
Well, that's it would definitely, like I said, it definitely put them in the top 10, and they would be right there with getting into, I guess, kind of battles with, like I said, Florida and Auburn for that next spot. All right, we've got some 2021 questions here. Well, I think actually Jamie Johnson asked us who's an under the radar signing we might see. I don't know if we'll see any other signings if it's not those three. I think we talked about last podcast, Matt, and I think maybe Brandon too. Maybe Ladd, but McConkey, but you talked to him and he didn't get an offer from Tennessee, and he kind of knows that the only way he'd probably get an offer from Tennessee is if things don't go their way. But they seem pretty confident because they didn't offer him. I think the only other one I can think of would be the Dylan Spencer kid, who is an offensive lineman on the same team as Jimmy Holiday, but I don't think he's coming to Tennessee unless, I think he knows that he's, again, like Ladd, I think he knows that he's kind of a backup option if things fall through. But I think Tennessee I think they feel fine with where they are on the offensive line with getting Cade Mays. I don't think they're in a, I think they offered him, I think they like him, but I think he might be going to somewhere else like a Missouri or something like that. So I don't really think there's any other under the radar names to watch for in the 2020 class. So we can go ahead and move on here to some 2021 questions. We've got a couple questions about top targets and things like that, but there's one I think is interesting that I wanted to talk about here. That's from VolsFan NJ, or at NJ VolsFan on Twitter. So it said Tennessee seemed to have some real difficulty getting traction with elite tackle bodies in the 2020 cycle. Do you think having 2 freshman 5-star tackles who started negatively impacted recruiting this area where everyone wants to play right away? And I think that's, I guess technically that's a kind of a bridge to the 2021 class here. But I definitely think, Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee really pursued a ton of top-end tackles. I think you look at Paris Johnson Jr., Marcus Dumerville, those are guys they obviously did pursue, but they were focusing a lot more heavily on the interior, on the guard and center positions in this class, and it's because that's what they had more of a need. And now you're seeing with some of the offers and people who Tennessee is pursuing in the 2021 class, and they are looking at more tackles because while I don't think they'd obviously play immediately as freshmen, you'd still have, when they are freshmen, you'd have Darnell Wright as a junior, you'd have Wanya Morris as a junior, and if all things go according to plan, those two should be going to the NFL after the junior season. So I definitely think having Wanya and Darnell impacted the Tennessee's ability to get any big-time offensive tackles in the 2020 class, but I also don't think outside of kind of the elite ones like the Paris Johnson and the Marcus Dumerville, I don't think Tennessee really was trying super hard to get some kind of big instant impact tackle in this class, and I think they're focusing more on that in the 21 cycle.
Well, they had looked at Tate Ratledge, and they had
that's true,
and looked at Broderick Jones. I think if Tennessee felt like they could have gotten one of those high-end elite offensive tackles, that I mean, obviously, if you can get those guys, you take them. But I do think having Wanya and Darnell both not just be true freshmen, but come in and be true freshmen that played so well this season. I mean, you're talking about a pair of freshman All-Americans. That's going to make it difficult to get a guy to come in and sit behind them for 2 or 3 years. Now, in this next class, I think Tennessee's going to definitely look at more offensive tackles. I think that's more of a priority.
Yep. They're
going to push there. They've got a lot of options. Again, the guy that I'm hoping for is Eli Sutton. I've seen a lot of these guys, and I'm telling you, this is a do-it-all, as good as you can ask for tackle, fantastic athlete, in Nashville. He's going to be tough. His recruitment's going to be strange. I don't think it's going to be strange in the sense of like the drama that we're seeing with the Zach Evans thing, but I think his recruitment is going to be a bit different. And Matt's touched on some of that with some of the offers he's gotten and some of the teams he's gone to see. I think this one's going to be an interesting one to watch. But there are a lot of tackles in this class that I know Tennessee likes.
Yeah, do you have anything you want to add there, Matt, before we move on to the next question?
I mean, no, I think you're probably looking at, your small. It was just a kind of a small pool of offensive tackles that they were really going after this year. Tate Ratledge, definitely they tried to get a little bit involved with Broderick Jones at the end, but why wouldn't you? Pretty smart with the position coach. He committed to leaving to go to Arkansas. So, I mean, Paris Johnson Jr., I think that was a long shot for everybody. I mean, I think Georgia made as good a run as they could make, and I think they finished a very, very distant second place. So, yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a lot of tackle bodies in this class for them. This upcoming year, you've got Amarius Mims, Terrence Ferguson, Eli Sutton. Those three guys right there are guys that you can revamp that position with. So, or reload, I guess would be the proper term for it. But I mean, no, outside of that, I really can't think of. I mean, I don't think Wanya and Darnell hurt that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to continually recruit that position, and it's a position of immediate impact for guys. And we saw Georgia stack guys continually up on the offensive line. I don't think they hurt that, but we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the tackle recruiting will be a lot bigger emphasis this go around than it was last, but we'll see.
An interesting question here from Andre Lowe. He says he lives over in the 336 area code, which is the Triad area of North Carolina. He says, I'm happy to see and hear that Tennessee's talking to prospects down here. What do we know about the guys over in that area? And looking at Tennessee's offer lists for the 2021 cycle, right now Tennessee's already offered 357 recruits according to 247 Sports, but they've offered the state they've offered the most in is Florida with 57. Second most is Georgia at 49. Third most, that's North Carolina. They've offered 33 kids from North Carolina. So definitely this cycle, Tennessee seems to really like the North Carolina kids. You got like a guy like Will Shipley, who's a 5-star running back, who we were talking, I think before I don't remember if we hit record now. We've talked here for about 40 minutes, so I can't remember. But we talked about bringing in Jay Graham being big for Tennessee running back recruiting, but it's also going to be big for Tennessee and North Carolina because he's from Concord, North Carolina. He knows the area well over there. He has a lot of connections there. So I think getting him was big for a lot of reasons, but also for the fact that Tennessee is going to be targeting a lot of guys in the North Carolina area. That Will Shipley's from Matthews, North Carolina. Obviously, Peyton Page is the big name there, 5-star who's over in Greensboro. Tennessee just got a kid named Isaac Washington who's from Pilot Mountain. So who all are some of these, some of the Triad area, which is, the big, Raleigh kind of area of North Carolina. Who are some kind of the big North Carolina kids that Vol fans should keep an eye on here in this 2021 cycle?
Yeah, I mean, you did a pretty good job of covering a lot of guys there. A kid I'm interested to see if they get involved with, like I said before we came on here, is Will Shipley. I think there's some very intriguing guys, some guys that are underrated, kind of like Jalen Hyatt was, that have really great film, but nobody goes and sees them. You obviously got Peyton Page. I still kind of think that Drake May is the quarterback priority in this class. We'll see what happens with him. Another kid that they've hosted is Gavin Blackwell. He's a top 100 receiver. I have to see if they can get him back on campus. That's going to be a tough recruitment. A kid from right up the road from me is named Yusuf Mugrabil from Murphy, North Carolina, a top 200 player. Tennessee was one of the early offers for him. They really like him. A lot of schools in to see him this past week. So, we'll see what happens with him. I think Tennessee will be involved there. Murphy is a Tennessee town. Yeah, Jafari Ritzie released his top 12 today. Tennessee was in that list of schools.
What about a guy like a Kobe Paysour or a Trevion Cooley?
I don't really know how much they've really went after Paysour. I really like Paysour's film, but I'm not sure where communication is with Tennessee. But we'll see if they can get him down here on campus, or if they choose to. Renaria Dilworth is that's a gem. That's a gem in the state of North Carolina right there. You're talking about a kid who is a linebacker, 6'2", around 190, and running in the sub 4.5 range, and rumored running in the 4.4 range. That's freakishly fast. Like you said, Isaiah Washington, they just got him. That's a recruit that they were really high on, and I talked about it a little bit before. Tracy Rockers caught some flack, and I think rightfully so to an extent, but he was big in that one. And outside of that, I mean, with Jay Graham back in the mix, there's not a kid that they're not going to know about. That's going to be a really interesting state to watch. And I was talking to my friend who's been a Tennessee fan for a long time, and I'll call and check in and see what's going on and everything like that. And he said Jay Graham's just huge for the state of North Carolina. And I said, what do you mean? I'm just understanding that he's from there and everything. And he said it just feels different. He said when Tennessee won, he said we cleaned up in Georgia, we got who we needed, went to Alabama, got guys that we needed. He said, but we just always took from North Carolina. And he said, no, he did mention, Clemson wasn't at their, normal height, and South Carolina probably wasn't what they are now, at least at a recruiting level, but Tennessee should still be able to go into North Carolina and have a lot of success.
Last question we'll get on here, and that is from Michael Fronteria on Twitter. He asks, who are the top targets for the 2021 cycle? We've already touched on a few of them there, talking about the North Carolina kids, and they're obviously some so obvious ones. Peyton Page, Dylan Brooks, Amarius Mims. Those are kind of big names. You look at the in-state kids too. You have Eli Sutton and Andre Turrentine, or a couple ones. Hudson Wolf, I mentioned him earlier. But aside from those guys, who are both of you guys feel free to chime in. I'll turn it over to you, Matt, first, and then Brandon, you can feel free to throw some names in there too. Aside from those, the kind of the big heavy names we've talked about before on the podcast, who are some other 2021 guys to keep an eye on for Vol fans here? Early on, things are going to, obviously the board's going to change as the months go on, as February is going to be a dead period, but once you get to March and everything, you have camp season in the summer, things are going to change. You're going to find more guys, they're going to send more offers, they're going to cool on other guys. But obviously, besides the kind of top 5 stars and top in-state kids, who are some more names in the 2021 cycle to kind of keep your eye out right now? And you guys are currently doing a good breakdown of the 21 class, doing the 21 for 21 series. So feel free to obviously kind of touch on that and talk about who you guys have already covered on there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Peyton Page is pretty high up there, priority number one. I think you got to put one of the edge rushers behind him. Probably Dylan Brooks or DeMoyen Robinson. Both those guys are very dynamic edge rushers. I'll go with after that. Let's see. I'm going to say Cody Brown after that. Probably. I still think you need to stockpile running backs.
Yep.
And then Andre Turrentine's an in-state guy to really watch, but probably a guy that's not been talked about a whole lot. I think he's viewed more as going to Georgia, and I think it's going to be a national recruitment. I think it's going to be one of those recruitments where everybody thinks early on he's going to Georgia, and I think it's going to be a true battle. He may end up there, but we'll see. Ismail Munden, outside linebacker out of Paulding County, Georgia. Like you said, Amarius Mims. I think Isaiah Johnson, the 5-star cornerback out of Bluefield, West Virginia, is another one. Tennessee, has done really good in the defensive backfield with Jerry Pruitt. They've signed some big name guys, the Jalen McCullough, the Keyshawn Lawrence, but they haven't signed that guy, the guy that they know, like the 5-star guy that they're so accustomed to getting. I think you gotta watch out for him. And then I'm gonna put, the last one, maybe I guess I'm around 10 right now, is Hudson Wolf. Gotta have Hudson Wolf. Absolutely, positively have to have Hudson Wolf in this cycle. There's no way around it, and it's going to be a tough pull, but you've got to have Hudson Wolf.
Before I go over to you, Brandon, a couple of names I'll throw in there too would be quarterback. If you miss out on Drake May, which will be tough since he's a Bama commit, but he is kind of wavering. I think would be a Christian Veilleux, 4-star pro style guy, and then you also have Junior Colson in state as well, which I feel like I may have stolen one of you guys there, Brandon, because I think you've mentioned him before. But who else would you add to this list, Brandon?
I didn't mention Eli Sutton, but that's probably a given too for Brandon.
Yeah. Junior and Eli were definitely two I was going to bring up. Andre Turrentine is up there. Junior's recruitment is going to be really interesting because he's we were talking this morning. Is there a school in the country that hasn't offered him?
I'd be surprised.
He's got offers from everywhere. I'm with you guys, Matt. I think Hudson Wolf is a absolute have to get. You went Cody Brown, and I know it's a guy that I've went to see, but man, Trenton Adkins up at Ridgeview, my goodness, he reminds me of Jalen Hurd. Reminds me of Jalen Hurd when he's coming out of Beach. That kid carried the ball in the game that I got to see him, I think 33, 35 times, and was just fresh as a daisy. He could have carried the ball another 10 times. His numbers are crazy. He's a big time athlete. Might be who I don't know. I think the staff probably has Cody Brown ahead of him. I'd love to see Tennessee get them both. A quarterback, I know he wouldn't be the top of who Tennessee's looking at right now, but Nealon Jean at Baylor plays with Elijah Howard. Tennessee's at least aware of him. Nealon he's been on some Power 5 visits. I think a lot of teams are kind of looking to see what he does as a senior. I don't think he would be Tennessee's first choice, but if Tennessee missed on a couple guys and really felt like they needed the quarterback, that might be a name that you hear come up. I'm trying to go through in my head who we've seen, who we've missed. A lot of your Memphis guys, a lot of your Memphis talent was in this cycle.
Yep.
I don't think you're going to see Tennessee be as heavily involved out there as they were last year. So
I think this cycle will be more Middle Tennessee and some East Tennessee, but more in-state wise, it'll be more Middle Tennessee stuff, I think.
We're going to see Tennessee flip a lot of attention from, I think, a lot of what you saw in Memphis last year is going to be in North Carolina this year.
Yep. 100% agree. You mentioned Junior Colson getting all those offers. I was looking at his recruiting profile. He's already got like almost 36 offers, and since 2020 began, he's picked up offers from Florida State, Oregon, Oklahoma, Georgia Tech, Wisconsin, USC, and he just added one today as we're recording this from Boston College. So I mean, this kid, like you said, there aren't really that many teams, Power 5 teams, who haven't offered him. He's legitimately. I mean, looking at his stats from Ravenwood this past season, Ravenwood, he had 175 tackles this season, 30 tackles for loss and 14 sacks. That is just
he
unreal.
Hit everything that moved. Teams would play Ravenwood, and everybody was afraid of Reggie Grimes. Everybody ran away from Grimes. So Ravenwood's defense was fine. We're going to put Grimes on one side. If you want to run away from him, we're going to put Colson on the other and let him mop up. Two other guys in Nashville that I should have mentioned and I didn't. One's going to be Walker Merrill at Brentwood High School. Walker's a 4-star wide receiver. I think there's some real interest from Tennessee there. I wasn't sure at first. I think there's some real interest there. He's going to be an interesting one to watch. And Noah Josie. It's going to be interesting to see if Tennessee gets involved with him at Brentwood Academy. He's a guard, plays with Eli Sutton. He's got a lot of big-time offers from big programs all across the country. It's going to be interesting to see what Tennessee does with Noah, because he's a very, very good guard, and I think if Tennessee wanted to push, they could have a have a chance there, especially with his offensive line coach. Pardon me. Especially with his offensive line coach having the Tennessee ties, with Eli getting the push and a few other teammates having gone to Tennessee.
Well, I think that'll about do it. I think that's pretty much all the questions. So we had a few that kind of overlapped and everything. We had someone ask us about Ray UGA, but I think we'll ignore that one for now. But I think that about got everybody's questions, and that we had a ton this week, and like I said, we had a few that kind of overlapped, but we managed to get this all done under an hour, guys. So that's pretty impressive. But Matt, I'll throw it over to you. What do you guys have coming down the wire at VR2? Like I said, I know you still have intermittently doing the 21 for 21 stuff. We have National Signing Day is a few days away, so I know both of us at VR2 and RTI are going to be very busy over the next few days preparing for not early signing period, the actual National Signing Day. So we'll obviously still have some regular basketball and football stuff, but I know we'll do some recruiting. But you guys will be hitting it hard for the recruiting trail. So what do you guys have on VR2.site currently, and what do you have coming up for National Signing Day next week?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We have National Signing Day coming up, and we really haven't looked much further than that. Brandon, I'm not sure what we're going to do there yet. Trying to just figure out if we're going to toward Tampa and Tallahassee area, I guess wherever Wideman is down there. If we're going to Alabama, to Tampa, okay.
So don't know if I'm
going. It's around Tampa and Sarasota. Am I right on that, Brandon? Is that what you told me? I'm not.
Yeah, south of Sarasota.
Okay. So trying to figure out if Brandon's heading that way, going to see Dee Beckwith. We're not going to Houston, Texas. We do know that. And then outside of that, it'll just be gearing up for these 2021 guys. There is a month-long dead period here.
That's
so
new.
That's going to make it interesting. That's when we're going to roll out a lot of the 21 for 21 stuff. You're going to see probably about 35 more prospects during that month that we haven't touched on yet, but we're really going to introduce that. Really going to start going on that. So it'll be interesting to see who's on campus this final weekend, but we'll keep everybody updated and we'll go from there. Should have some interviews coming out this weekend. There's no official visitors that we know of, so it's
for the 20 class at least. There's a lot of kids coming in.
There's a lot of kids for 21. Just nobody for the 20 class coming in as an official visitor right now. So we'll see what happens with that, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, a really fun finish on National Signing Day, and I think that we're going to see Tennessee have a really good opportunity this weekend to make an impression on some big names in the 2021 class. Starts with Demoy and Robinson.
It's funny. I was just thinking. I think about 3 weeks ago or so, Matt. It might have just been you and me on the podcast, and Brandon might one that he was missed. But we're talking about that. We think that National Signing Day for Tennessee this year was going to be boring. Well, that changed in a hurry.
Yeah, it did.
With the Zach Evans stuff, with Malachi Wideman coming on to visit, that kind of has changed, and now we're going to actually have not as much intrigue, obviously, as previous years where there was an early signing period, or just previous years for Tennessee in general, in its first couple years. But it turned out to be from going to a potentially boring, maybe Tennessee will add a one or two guys here to Tennessee has a chance to hit some home runs here for National Signing Day. But as you said, check them out, VR2.site. They're at _VR2_ on Twitter. You can find them at VR2 on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can find us at RockyTopInsider.com, and we're Rocky Top Insider on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And a lot of you listen to the podcast on YouTube, so we appreciate that. Obviously, you can comment down below during it, and we'll see your comments and maybe answer questions if you have any, or maybe answer on the next podcast. But appreciate all of you tuning in to this episode, and until next time, this has been another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast.